In my last video, I mentioned that I had just picked up this Tandy 1000 TL at my local Free Geek. Now, that Free Geek has had some hard times fall on it in the intervening couple weeks. They had a fire that caused some pretty significant damage to their building. They are currently trying to have a fundraiser to be able to perform some repairs on their building so that they can get their operation going again. I'm going to put a link in the description if you would like to contribute to their cause and try to get them back up and going again. In the meantime, I'm going to talk about this computer as I said I would. This video is going to more be a, I don't want to say tutorial, but it's kind of in that space. It is mostly going to focus on how to take a piece of retro equipment like this that is working and make it useful. Like just having a computer that turns on is neat, but you need an operating system on it. You need software on it. You need stuff so that you can do something. And that's going to mostly be the focus of this video. Since this came from Free Geek, I'm actually anticipating that it's just going to work. But there may be some surprises along the way. There's always room for surprises. So, I'm going to start by taking a quick look at the outside of it, and then we'll go ahead and dig into the inside. Before I get too zealous about opening this thing up, let's take a look at the outside. The nice Tandy 1000 TL badge, reset button, headphone jack, microphone jack, which is a new addition on this line of Tandy 1000s, a volume knob that, like, this is a very satisfying volume knob. The volume knob on the Tandy 1000 HX is in kind of an inconvenient location, and it's not a great volume knob. Floppy drive that should be a 720K floppy drive, power switch. Rotate it around to the side. Should be a screw here, but this screw and its friend on the other side are both missing, so it seems as if maybe Free Geek did part of my job for me. Rotating around to the back, we have the keyboard jack, and this one, I believe, will use a regular XT keyboard, whereas the previous big case Tandy 1000s needed a special Tandy keyboard. It still uses the TRS-80 style joysticks, serial, the goofy edge connector printer port, the monitor port, and this is interesting. Apparently this model will both drive a CGA style monitor and a monochrome style monitor. And I have just recently acquired a monochrome monitor, or at least what I believe is a monochrome monitor, from the giant barn find a few weeks ago. I haven't tested it out. Maybe I'll give it a try. Several expansion slots, and the slot covers on these are different from typical PC slot covers. This is a thing that has annoyed me on my other big case Tandy 1000 and an internal modem. Rotating slowly around to the other side, we can see the other vacant screw hole. All right, well, now that we've had a quick look at the outside, let's pull this lid off and take a look at the inside. Since the screws are already out from the sides, as far as I can tell, that's the only thing that holds the lid on. This should just be able to come off. May have to give it a little bit of gentle encouragement. Is it? Okay, so it's a lift-off kind. Okay. Let's try this again. Lift off and slide. Okay, easy. All right. Let's see what we have inside. So, okay. I'm already confused. Fairly plain. So as expected, one of the things about these Tandy 1000s, even though this has somewhere, probably right here, lurking inside of it is a 286, it only has 8-bit slots And I believe that the path to memory is also only 8 bits, which is a bummer. Fortunately, it uses a regular coin cell battery. I wonder if Free Geek replaced that. We'll find out soon enough. Another thing that irritates me about the Tandy 1000s, at least the big case ones, is these screws that they use for the slot covers are not the typical slot cover screws. And my other Tandy 1000 has 0 of the original screws. It's a hodgepodge of weird things that aren't quite right. So these appear to all be the correct. Yeah, okay. These appear to all be the correct original screws. So that means I should be able to figure out exactly what kind of screw these are and order some for my other Tandy 1000. Because right now there's there's one of the screws on it that has a huge washer because it's the wrong screw. It has a huge washer to hold it on to try to hold the slot. It's a mess. It just barely works. The thing that's interesting about this is this goofy modem card, which I'm going to pull out here. I was not anticipating something like this. So the Tandy 1000 EX and HX, they use 8-bit ISA. I'm going to say they use 8-bit ISA protocol, but they are not 8-bit ISA slots. They have this weird sort of pin connector, and they stack one on top of each other. So apparently what Tandy did, so that they didn't have to order different modems, is they just made an adapter card to adapt the EX-HX style connector to a regular 8-bit ISA slot. So that is kind of interesting, and that could be useful someday. I mean, an internal modem, and this is, does it say on here obviously what speed it is? It does not, that I am able to discern, but from this era I would guess that it's 2400 baud tops, possibly 1200. So the modem is not useful, but this card may be useful. And I have to leave something in the slot because, as I pointed out before, I know other people have quested to find replacement slot covers for the Tandy 1000s. They are different. Instead of being completely flat and straight here, there's a weird little bend. And so regular slot covers, normally the slot cover comes down inside of the case, and the little metal tab here comes straight down here and connects into something there to hold it into place. The Tandy 1000s, the metal tab kind of snakes around and goes to the outside. So if you use a regular flat slot cover like this, it'll fit in, but even when you screw it in here, it wants to, I don't know how well you can see this, maybe you can hear it. It wants to flap around. So it's not, depending on how much of a purist you are, it's not right. So they have this weird bend. So if you ever come across a slot cover that has a flat bottom like this and has this bend in the metal, it's for a Tandy 1000. And if you're trying to use it in something other than a Tandy 1000, you'll be annoyed because it won't work very well. But don't throw it out. Find someone in your area who is a Tandy 1000 collector. They will probably need it. Okay, so what else do we have going on in here? So one thing about this particular model of Tandy 1000 is it has 640K on the motherboard, and it has sockets for an additional 128K. And it's my understanding that if you populate these, it makes the video adapter used this memory instead of stealing some of your base 640K. I have some of these memory chips. They're just regular 64K by 4-bit memory chips, as are used in a lot of different things. I have a few of them around in my stock. So I'm going to see, after I get DOS fully installed on this, I'm going to see what the memory map looks like, and then I'm going to upgrade the RAM and see what the memory map looks like again and try to figure out. Every website that has information about this kind of just parrots the same thing that everyone else says, and after reading the same or approximately the same thing 47 times, I started to wonder, like, is this just the telephone game and nobody really knows what's happening? So I want to actually probe it and see what is really going on with this. Socket presumably for math coprocessor, and then almost all of everything else is pretty highly integrated. There appears to be a jumper back here that says VSync IRQ5. Okay, so I did read about this. This jumper can be switched to the other position so that the Tandy video adapter will generate interrupt 5 every VBlank, which is useful, and it appears to be disabled on this one, which I wonder why. Another quirk about the Tandy 1000s that makes them a bit of a hassle to deal with is, you'll notice this floppy cable has no twist. The drive ID, normally PC floppy drives are all set to be, on the drive itself, are set to be drive ID 1, and then the twist in the cable makes the thing plugged into the end of the cable be drive ID 0. Tandy 1000s don't do that. They actually use the drive selector. The other thing that I find very irritating about them is, notice there's no power connector connected to this floppy drive. Pins that are on most floppy cables that are typically ground, some of these are power. So if you just plug a regular floppy drive into this cable, or if you plug a Gotek into this cable without having modified the drive or the cable, you will fry it. Now we can kind of see down here, it's a little bit harder to tell. Is it even coming through on the camera? No, I'm gonna have to unplug this. All right, let me extract this cable. So you'll notice on here that the part of the cable that would go to a 5 1/4 drive has these holes in it. And those holes are punched through the lines that would have power, because the 5 1/4, apparently there was no 5 1/4 that can 5 1/4 inch drive that can take power over the data cable. And so they had to punch these lines, or had to punch these holes through these wires to prevent frying 5 1/4 inch drive connected to the system. Which brings me to an interesting thought. I wonder, so presumably this drive is going to have, a lot of times, PC 3.5 inch drives don't have the ability to adjust the drive select, or at least don't have the ability to adjust it without soldering. And that is one of the things that makes them annoying to try to use in other. Okay, this is annoying. Does this come off? Yes. Okay. Let's go this way. No. Comes out that way. Okay. Makes them annoying to use in other kinds of computers that want different drive select logic. I wonder if these Tandy drives would be easier to use in, say, an Amiga, where you, as Amiga internal drives, where you do want drive select logic. All right, let's disconnect this. So this doesn't even have, the connector for for power. It can only take power. I mean, there's a spot for it. There's solder pads. Where is... Okay, here's the switch on the side. And there's a lot going on this circuit board. It is hard to tell what is going on there. And the glare from the studio lights don't help. Oh, okay, here we are. Up on the edge of the PCB here, it really small, certainly unreadable numbers is 0 -3. So this little switch is set for DS0. Swipe it all the way to the end is DS3, and presumably there's two other positions in the middle for 1 and 2. So this looks remarkably clean inside. I have difficulty believing that it was this clean. I mean, I guess there's a little bit of dust, but not very much. I suspect FreeGeek must have cleaned this this out for me. I don't think I'm going to disassemble this further. There's not a lot to see on these motherboards. I see no evidence of any capacitor leakage. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that would be hard to show. Obviously, because it uses the coin cell battery, there's no battery leakage. This is a shockingly clean retro computer system board. I am pretty impressed. So the one thing that's kind of interesting, I wonder if I can tip this up. Okay, so here you can see, I'm gonna try to zoom in a little bit. Okay, I don't know if it's gonna wanna. So in here you can see there are 2 ROM chips and 2 sockets for additional ROM chips as I'm in the light. So there's 2 empty sockets for ROM chips here. And the thing that's interesting about those is they are labeled even and odd. So maybe this actually does have a 16-bit path to memory. Because typically, if it only had an 8-bit path, you wouldn't have even and odd like that. But what I wonder is if a person could write extra ROMs and populate out these other sockets to have other things, like it could be interesting to make 16-bit XT IDE ROMs and put in there, and then have an 8-bit XT IDE card that doesn't have a ROM in it. So you would get 16-bit access to the ROMs, but I mean, you'd still have 8-bit access to the card, and it still might make it go a little bit faster, since especially reading from compact flash or something, you're CPU bound, you're not IO bound. The other thing that's interesting about that is we'll see in a little bit. What is this? We'll see in a little bit that the Tandy 1000s have DOS and have part of... Oh, that does not want to... It does not want to come out. They have DOS. I want to say it's Tandy DOS 3.3, which is a slightly tweaked version of MS-DOS. And part of their fantabulous DeskMate software in ROM. But I wonder then if you could extract these ROMs and put a more recent DOS version in ROMs, because it is very nice. We're going to get to this. It's very convenient being able to have these just boot up into DOS with no drives. But DOS 3.3 is pretty dire. And if my memory of the Tandy 1000 EX and HX is correct, it's a very, very minimal install of DOS. So I wonder if you could put, get more ROM in there and have a bit more of a full install and have a later version of DOS. That may be a later video. So what the heck is... Oh, was just this weird bracket like attached onto the front here. What? Why is this exist? And there's 2 slots. I guess it could go on the inside. What? Is there some obvious way that this doesn't touch on anything inside the case? There's nothing in there for it. My other Tandy 1000 did not have a random metal hoobajoob in here. I'm gonna have to take a moment and look this up and see what that is, why that exists. Hold please. According to the manual, I'm gonna stop myself right there because on the day of recording, I completely misread the Tandy manual. What the Tandy 1000 TL manual actually says, if I scroll down and go to hard disk card installation, is it says attach the bracket to the hard disk card. The bracket attaches to the left side on some, to the right on others. So what this is really for is it attaches to a hard card, what we would more commonly know as a hard card, and it just acts as weight support for this other end. It's not anything terribly exciting. Are actually supposed to be 2 of these, and the idea, which is you attach these to the front edge. I have a very old, I guess it's not that old if it's 1.3 gigabytes, but I have an old ADE hard drive here. You attach this bracket to the front. And this is one of the only hard drives I could find where you could possibly even do this trick, because the idea is there's 2 slots on the case. Oh, that was extreme close-up. And the idea is you put these in here like so. Yeah, that just barely wants to fit. I am not going to install this permanently. This is just to show how what Tandy thought would be a neat trick. And then, so you would have 2 of these, and you would slot them both in, and just like, how could this possibly work? Because it slots in, but it doesn't hang particularly, and the drawing in the manual definitely shows it going the other way. And if you put it this way, it just sits on the... What? I don't understand at all what they possibly could have been thinking. How? And in the manual, let me switch back over to that. It must be some other, because in the manual, it's just sandwich your hard drive in these and put it through these slots and go ahead and hang it. And that's it. If you ever had a Tandy 1000 TL that had a hard drive installed on these goofy brackets, please tell me about it in the comments. I would love to hear about if or how this worked, because it seems like there's a substantial gap between theory and practice on this one. Like, I do not see how this could have worked. Since I am not going to use this bracket for its intended purpose, I'm going to put it right back where it was, bolted to the front of the case. And the next person who has this computer can marvel at, why? All right, I'm going to take a moment to do the minimal amount of reassembly necessary here, and then I think we're going to get into what should be the real meat and potatoes of this video, which is, right now this is nothing. How do you get it running so that it is something, and so that it is a usable system, essentially bootstrapping from the ground up? Predominantly in YouTube videos about setting up retro computers for modern use, people will advise to get one of these or something substantially similar to this. This is an XT IDE. It enables the use of 16-bit IDE drives with 8-bit computers. And these are a really great solution. And this particular card was a really great card until a restoration video that I was doing earlier this year, where somehow I fried it and I still have not gotten around to repairing or replacing it. So this is it is dead. But normally these, either with a IDE to compact flash adapter, or my personal preference is these IDE to SD card adapters. I have found that IDE to compact flash adapters are passive because compact flash is IDE. I have had a lot of compatibility problems with various old computers, that one computer will work great with a compact flash card, and I put it into a very, very similar computer and it just pitches a fit and it will not recognize the card, or it won't work, or whatever. So I've had a lot of bad luck with those. And talking to other retro computer enthusiasts, I'm not the only one. These devices, they're a bit more expensive. I bought a stack of 20 of these 10 years ago or something, and they were less than $10 a piece at that kind of quantity. I am sure that they are more now, but they are not going to be that expensive. And compact or SD cards are a lot easier to find than compact flash, at least in my experience. And I have yet to find something that these don't work with. So I've had a lot better luck with these. Although not right now, I have zero luck with that because the card is broken. So the other solution that I like, and what I'm going to use on this, is having a bootable SCSI card. These are quite a bit harder to find. And the ones, the couple that I have, I hold on to with a death grip. And I even have a couple of cards that have slots for a boot ROM, but don't have a boot ROM installed. And one of these days, I'm going to figure out how to get a boot ROM for them and make them bootable. This particular card, and a lot of cards like this, have both internal SCSI and floppy. I have previously configured this one to disable the floppy because every computer that I have tried to use it with has an integrated floppy controller. This specific card I have only used with Tandy 1000s, which have integrated floppy controller, and what else? Oh, the AT&T PC 6300s, which I've done several videos about. Those also have integrated floppy controllers. So I've disabled the floppy controller on this. So I can use this. You can use this either with SCSI hard drives, which are their own set of challenges, or let's see how this is going to be difficult to get in, isn't it? Oh, this is going to be fun to get in because that does not want to. I for sure do not miss the old giant 50-pin SCSI Centronics connector. This massive thing that barely fits makes installing these a real hassle. Why is this being extra difficult? Oh, for crying out loud. Why does it keep getting stuck? Okay. Okay. All right. So you can use them with internal SCSI hard drives, which is its own set of challenges. You can use them with CD-ROM drives, which is kind of neat on a computer like this. I don't know. I don't know what you would use a CD-ROM drive for on an 8088 or even a slow 286 computer, but my personal favorite thing to use them with is an external SCSI zip drive. And actually an internal zip drive would work fine too. It's just easier. You only need one of these and you can move them around from computer to computer. The super convenient thing about this is I can pop this zip drive or this zip disk out, take it over to my modern computer where I have a USB zip drive and copy files onto it and bring it back. It's kind of the same convenience as having one of these that's externally accessible, so you can just pop this out, and it's sort of the same idea. It's just the fully retro version of this. And in fact, this zip drive I bought new right after zip drives, right after they came out when I was living out in the Arlington Heights area out in the suburbs of Chicago. I bought it I am pretty sure I bought it at a CompUSA out there. And at that time, CompUSAs had not made it to the West Coast, at least not to Portland, Oregon, where I'm from, and I moved back from Chicago. It was too cold in the winter and too hot and humid in the summer. I came back to much more mild weather. So I like to use these, and that's what I'm going to do on this. In any of these cases, you still kind of have the bootstrap problem of, okay, I have a blank disk that has nothing. Essentially this is a hard drive. So whatever hard drive solution you have a hard drive, and now you need an operating system on it. And dealing with floppy disks is a pain. And I have discovered, at least on modern Linux, it is getting even more painful. But it ends up actually being a lot easier with these Tandy 1000s. So I'm going to put the lid back on this. I'm going to finish hooking this up. I'm going to figure out where I put the special screw for this so that I can actually screw this in. And then I guess I'm maybe putting the cart before the horse. I'm assuming that this is going to boot up. As clean and as nice as this looks, I'm assuming it's going to boot up. So I'm going to boot it up, and I'm going to try out the floppy drive in it. That may I may have gotten ahead of myself. Hopefully nothing will explode, but we've got a camera on it just in case. All right, that's a good sign. This is one of the disadvantages of SCSI. And especially this card seems really bad about this. Where it has to probe the entire SCSI bus and ask each drive ID location, is there anybody there? Is there anybody there? Is there anybody there? So it does add some time to the boot up. Okay, so FreeGeek must have put a fresh battery in because it knows the correct date. All right, the time is off, but I guess I can forgive that. So this is booted up into an abbreviated form of deskmate. And I should be able to... Is it just escape to get out? I think it's just escape. Yes, it's just escape. So then it should be... There should be a... So, no, that's a weird layout. Okay. This is the DOS that is in those ROMs. And I wonder, does... So yes, it is 3.3. It would be interesting to try to replace those ROMs. The way that I think this works is in the chips, there are multiple headers for ROM images. So there's the regular BIOS header, BIOS section, which is at a fixed location. And then at some other location, there's the magic header that says, oh, by the way, there's an option ROM here. And that's the option ROM that is this disk. And it knows how to boot from that. It seems like it ought to be possible to replace this. That will be a project for another day. Okay, but this is going to let us solve the bootstrap problem. I have some brand spanking new DSDD floppy disks. I have noticed on Linux, I have several external USB floppy drives, and a thing that I have noticed is very irritating is if you have a disk that is not formatted at all, when you put it in a Linux computer, it says, oh, I see that this is a block device that has 0 blocks, and you can't do anything with it. You can't format it, because when you try to format it, it says, hey, this drive is 0 blocks. I can't format that. Are you stupid? No, I am not. But maybe somebody here is. So you have to at least be able to get the disk formatted. The other irritating thing that I have noticed is if you have, say, a disk that is formatted as high density, when you put it in the Linux computer, it says, oh yeah, that's a high density drive or high density disk. I know how to work with that. And no matter what you do, that will be a high density disk. And it's just something about how the USB drives work. I don't think you would have that problem using a proper internal floppy drive connected to a floppy drive interface, but modern computers don't have those anymore. So you're kind of stuck. And what this means is you have to have something retro working to a point where you can at least format a floppy disk. And fortunately, this has format in ROM. And so I should be able to, you can work, little fella, you can do this. You should be able to say format :/s. Drive failure. Okay, so the drive may... Alright, the drive may need cleaning or some maintenance. Here's going to be the first bummer about this. I can't just put a different floppy drive in here because of these shenanigans. Although, maybe with adapters I could connect it into here? Oh, that would be interesting. All right, let me at least try a cleaning disc and see if that gets anything going. Hold, please. I'm not sure what to make of that. I've tried a few things with this floppy drive now, including using the cleaning disc. And I did extract it, and I put a little bit of sewing machine oil on a couple points that may need lubrication. And it seems like the only thing that makes it work reliably is when it doesn't want to read the disc, is give it a tap. You give it some percussive maintenance, and then it works fine. The mechanical aspect of these repairs is for sure my weakest area. It is definitely worse even than my soldering skills, so I'm not sure what that means. I think this is another case where I'm going to have to consult with someone who actually knows what the floppy drive they're doing. Alright, but this formats. So now that this disk is formatted, I can take it over to my Linux computer and I can use something like DD. I can go to the interwebs. I can download floppy disk images for MS-DOS, and I can DD them onto this floppy disk, and then I actually have floppies that I can install from. So I can make it to the next step. Now, what I'm going to choose for this, DOS 3.3 is pretty dire. It is lacking a lot of functionality. I would much prefer to use DOS 6 or DOS 6.2.2. I have read various things that the installers for some of the very later versions of DOS have problems on these machines. I think one of them, the installer just crashes straight away, and the other one has other difficulties. The other problem for it is those operating systems only came on high density disks, and this is a 720K drive. So what I'm going to pick, the last version of DOS that natively shipped on 720K floppies was DOS 5.0. Back in the day, I used DOS 5.0 quite a lot. It was the version of DOS that Commodore shipped with bridge boards, so I had it for my bridge board on my Amiga 3000. I used it a lot on there. It has a lot of the modern conveniences of DOS 6. Including it has edit. That was the big thing for me. DOS 3.3 does not have edit. Like, how? I am not using Edlin. I am just... no. So I'm going to make some DOS 5.0 floppies. I'm going to actually connect my zip drive to this, and we're going to move on to step 2 in the bootstrapping process. I've completed all of the off-camera prep work. I formatted 3 additional floppies, which I then took over to my Linux computer and DD'd the 3 disks for MS-DOS 5.0. And I also prepared a zip disk by using DD to write all zeros to it. Now, kids, DD is a powerful tool, but you got to be real careful with it. You have to run it as root using either logging in as root, don't do that, or using sudo. And when you tell it, take this image and write it to this device, there's no padding. It is not nerfed at all. You can wreck things. So use something like LSBLK to make sure that the device that you are going to write to is the USB floppy device, or the zip drive, or the compact flash card, or whatever it is. Don't write a bunch of zeros to your SSD. You will be sad. Now, I don't know anybody who has ever done that more than once. And in fact, I take it a step further. I am fortunate that I have two modern PCs. I have one that I actually use for work, and I have a second one that I basically just use to run OBS on to record these things. So a lot of that kind of stuff I will do on this computer over here, and it doesn't have anything on it except temporarily it has the recording. So while I'm doing this, if I DD and erase the disk, I might lose the day's recordings. But I'm not going to lose my life's work. If I did that on the computer over there, I would probably just rage quit everything and just go be a hermit out in the forest or something and give up altogether. So be careful. All right, that's my PSA. I did forget one important step. By default, pretty much no matter what you do, these computers will boot off the ROM and will boot into Deskmate, which is likely not what you want. So there is a download site that has every setup program for every version of Tandy 1000. It seems like that would have been a thing they could have put in the ROM, but they did not. And that choice I do not understand. Whoops. So the setup, percussive maintenance. So there is a excuse me. There is a setup TL, which I'm going to run, and we'll run it again, but I want to show the basic version so we can pick the default settings. Now, interestingly, so on the back of this, it gave some instructions for how to switch to Monochrome after you've booted up, but I wonder if just setting this will set the default. What we want here is we want to boot from disk and boot to MS-DOS. So even if we did boot from the ROM, it would boot straight to DOS and not start Deskmate. That is an important step in this process. Okay, so now I should be able to put this in here and put this in here and Control-Alt-Delete reboot. And we should be ready to just install DOS. And as does, probing the SCSI bus does take, it just feels like so long. Alright, it detected the zip drive. It's spinning the zip drive. So now when we start up, because we haven't loaded the zip software, it's gonna just, this is a hard drive. So you do have to be very careful about removing the disk, because this is going to be the C drive. You have to be careful about removing the disk, making changes to it, and bringing it back. It does not understand that. It does not understand that this is removable media and bad things can happen. So while the computer's on, leave the disk there. All right, so we're going to boot off of this. Now I think what I want is to exit. What? Okay, but I want to exit. Why? I don't understand why it's not. Okay. Alright, well, I will just let it do its own F-disking and whatnot. Okay, so it F-disked. Presumably it did it correctly. I want to actually show using F-disk, but for some reason it was not listening to F3. It said F3, hit F3 to exit, but it was not it just doesn't listen anymore. And I think once it gets booted back up and the actual install starts to happen, it becomes very boring and there is not anything to watch, and I will likely cut to the end unless something spicy happens along the way. Now, zip drives are a lot faster than floppies, but they are not as fast as a hard drive or as a SD card or a compact flash card, for sure. And they're not as quiet either. Alright, so now... Okay, so it's going to format this drive. It's going to take a minute. We'll be back. And just finished formatting the drive, and now it is... I think that it predominantly just copies all the files from the 3 floppy disks one at a time. So it's going to start copying from this disk. When it gets done copying all the stuff from this disk, it's going to ask me to put the next disk in. Lather, rinse, repeat. It's going to be super boring. Alright, it's done with that disk. Now for disk 2. And notice the floppy drive is just working. Like, you give it a little bit of percussive maintenance every now and again, and it seems okay. There's probably something to actually be fixed in there, and I should figure out what that is, because I don't know with the lid on that, oh? I can't tell which is... Oh, come on, floppy disk. Don't play me like this. Alright. I may need another... write another floppy of this. Let's try this again. Okay. Made a different disk. Seems to be working fine. It's always hard to tell with floppy disks. Like, you hear it going the like, oh, you can do it. You can do it. All right. More boring. Hopefully disk 3 won't be as interesting. Disk swapping excitement just never ends. Okay. It says it's done, and it's time to go. Oh, I forgot about this. It's been a while since I've installed. I forgot that it's by default enters this silly DOS shell. It's time for sure. Okay. So now I'm going to say that the setup is complete. Actually, no. One last thing. There. Now, setup is complete. And I'm going to dig around, and I'm going to find memory chips to put in there. Let's see what mem says. Okay. Well, mem says, yeah, there's 589 bytes, 589K of conventional memory. It's all available to MS-DOS. 527 is the largest executable program size. Okay. I'm going to go install those other memory chips, and that should cause this to increase to 640K. Let's see what happens. It's my understanding that the installation is pretty straightforward. There's no jumpers to set or anything. You just need 4 of these 64K by 4. Yeah, 64K by 4 memory chips. So there's 4 of them. 2 of them make 64K by 8, which is 64 kilobytes. So these would be... Technically, each one of these chips is 64 kilo nibbles, because a nibble is a half a byte. Isn't that cute? Install the 4 of them for 128K. The only trick is to make sure that the notch, there's a little notch on this, is pointing towards the front of the case. And then make sure that you don't have that, make sure all the pins get properly installed, which I'm going to do fairly carefully. I will go back, I'm going to insert these and try not to get my big dumb head in the way of the camera. Oh, that has a little bit of a bent pin there. That will go in. And then I will go back and double check my work and make sure that all the pins are properly in, because from the angle I'm at, I can't see the other side, so I don't know if maybe there's a pin that is out of the socket. The one bummer on this is that the SCSI ID screen pops up right over top of it does print a line that says how much memory is installed, and that covers it up very quickly. It may have shown up for a couple of frames on the video, but I did not have the opportunity to see it. Let's see what Mem says. Hey, look at that! The full 640K. All right, that's it. It's now set up. All I have to do is put the lid back on and call this good. A couple things left before I finish off. There is a /A option on the setup TL that apparently gives some advanced configuration options. I've never run it. Let's see what okay, so this lets you very precisely configure the number of floppies and which position is drive A. Okay. So I'm gonna assume that this top and bottom thing means whether it's the cable that has the part of the cable that has the holes cut in it that would be for a 5 1/4 inch drive down here, or it's the drive selected as DS0 in one of these two slots. Okay, so that's useful. Page down is next screen. Where's page down? This weird keyboard. Okay, so this looks basically like the non-advanced setup screen, except things are laid out a little bit differently. Although it does have a different option for booting up the computer speed. I believe that the 286 in this is 8 megahertz, so maybe you could boot it up at 4 megahertz. Memory diagnostics on startup. Oh, that can be useful. I'm going to switch that to yes. Color or monochrome. I am going to try switching that. I also want to test out the monochrome monitor. Just see if it works. Oh. Well, now that's interesting. So it's set to 64K, so I get all my DOS memory. I guess I could set it to 128K, and then I would lose that DOS memory. I don't know for sure what having 128K video memory would get me. All right, let's page down, see what else there is. Automatically load network. What? Network receive support. I don't know what this. Okay, weird. I wonder if if they had like a specific network card. So is this how you would disable the onboard serial port to use an ISA card for those? So so this must have a 16-bit memory bus. And then language selections. Okay. And then back to the beginning. Okay, so let's do that. All right, so that was interesting. There are more options in there. I'm gonna grab that monochrome monitor and hook it up, and we'll see if that works. I don't know if this might have REFAs in it or anything, so I decided to wait to even plug it in until it was on camera. It is it is in barn found state. It is filthy. So we'll see. Okay, it didn't explode yet. Oh, I heard high voltage come up. So I'm gonna turn. Oh. Did it automatically detect that it's because he was supposed to have to do Control-Alt-Shift-V. Well, that doesn't seem to have done anything. Okay, so it automatically figured out that it was monochrome? That's interesting. Okay, now it's being... That didn't sound like a good sync noise. Oh, it just rebooted itself. The monitor could cause it to misbehave like that? That's unexpected. Okay. And it sounds like it's booting from the zip drive. Alright. Well, that is a working and really good condition. Actually, I don't even see... I mean, that's full brightness, and it's not super bright. That's about halfway. So this is a pretty tired amber monochrome, but it's working. That is pretty cool. Okay, I'm going to put the other monitor back. And I'm gonna take this in the back for a cleanup. This will likely come back in another video. That is how there are other ways, but that is how I set up a Tandy 1000 TL from Bootstrap, from bare nothing. Now, zip drives maybe aren't the best way if you don't have any of them. If you have any zip drives around from back in the day, either the SCSI one or USB from a little bit more modern times, those drives can get fairly expensive, unfortunately. But they are so super useful. I especially like having the SCSI ones because you can just use them with 68K Macintoshes or Amigas or Atari STs that have SCSI. There are a lot of old computers that had SCSI, and so it's very useful for getting data on and off of those systems. Now I'm gonna let a slightly updated version of my music player kind of play us out. Hopefully the volume level wasn't too abruptly loud when it popped on there. I don't have the headphones on, so I can't hear it. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate you clicking the like button. If you are interested in more of this kind of content, I highly recommend that you click the subscribe button. Next month, in just a very few days, I am going to be digging into the Apple Network Server 700s. I think I have time enough today that as soon as I can get all of this cleared away, I'm going to go ahead and pull them over here and start tearing them apart. I fully expect that the first video is just going to be disassembly and cleanup, and that the follow-on video or videos will be installing operating systems and getting them running properly, etc., etc. Please enjoy the Castlevania music that is now playing at much closer to the correct playback speed than in my previous video. And until next time, try to remember the good stuff.